Hi, my name is Viktor Dorfler and I am from the Management Science Department, and I would like to introduce the concepts of the knowledge economy and knowledge society today. Basically, the information era started at the time when the computers were invented. Now, this is not when we first started to use information, obviously. Therefore, it is the invention of the computers is frequently associated with a kind of information revolution. And we say that this is the third information revolution. The first was when we started to speak. The second was when we invented the writing. And the third is supposed to be when we invented computers. But it can also be associated with the industrial revolutions. We had the big industrial revolutions, and sometimes we say that it is the second industrial revolution because it so significantly changed about how we work, how we produce goods, and so on. But to understand really this development of the information era, we need to go back a bit, and I will use the terminology of the sociologists. So originally they were talking about the first era as the land era. They used this term because they observed that at that time the size of the land you own was directly proportionate with the power and wealth you have. So later became what we usually call the industrial era. The sociologists sometimes call this the fume era. It is called the fume era because they looked at the height of your chimney, and the height of your chimney seems to be proportionate with your wealth and power. Now, what is also important is that it is not really the chimney, it is how much manufacturing capacity you have. Just it happens that if you have a bigger factory, you usually need a higher chimney as well. But what we need to understand is that in this information era, in this era of computers, we are still much more dependent in our basic life needs of combines, so basically the agriculture, those guys who are making bread and meat and all things that we eat, it is still much more essential to our lives. But much more people are now working with and on computers, and we use these computers all the time in each area of our lives. Actually, those who are making the food and our primary goods, they are also using computers all the time. But is this where we are at the moment? My argument is this is not. There was a conference when a lady said, it was about 2 years ago, and she said that now that we are stepping into the information era, and then someone screamed, come on, you have not even noticed that the information era has passed. We are not in the information era anymore. There is something new coming up, and we can call it the knowledge era. And I will try to clarify what the distinction is, because as we tend to confuse the information with the knowledge, we often appear to identify the two eras with each other. But like it or not, the information era is finished. We are now in the knowledge era. I will try to explain the difference between information and knowledge in order to grasp a bit better this concept of the knowledge economy and knowledge society. Now, the depth of the difference cannot really be covered in this very short session. If you really need to go into depth of what information is, what knowledge is, then you will have to attend my knowledge management class. But even on this, our intuitive understanding of information and knowledge, it is reasonably easy to find out what the differences are. The important thing is that we are obsessed with the information. If you, for example, look at TV advertising, there is science behind it. They say that this, I don't know what kind of chemical, is killing 99% of those bacteria on your, I don't know, table or wherever. We cannot really think that this is true. But they say this is a fact. And if you ask them about the details, they can show you a research that will support this statement that it will kill 99% of the bacteria. Now, this is exactly the reason why George Kelly says that we are all scientists. it is not that we are all involved in science, in scientific research, and so on. But we talk about science all the time. We use our advertising supported by all sorts of scientific facts. If you go to a pub, you will hear people discussing many topics that belong to the area of science. We have, for example, if you would do a survey how many people heard about Einstein, it will be similar to any kind of rock stars and other things. So it means that we are obsessed with this kind of scientific knowledge, and it is because in the West, the concept of knowledge is identified more or less completely with the idea of the scientific knowledge. But I will argue that this is not the only type of knowledge. Furthermore, it is actually the inheritance of the information era that we identify this scientific knowledge with the knowledge in more general terms. And the reason is that once we manage to obtain some kind of scientific evidence about something, we have really facts, and these facts are information, and then we start looking into this information. Now, the other reason why we are so obsessed with the information is that the computers are introduced as information processing devices. And those guys who are selling computers, they try to convince us that information is the ultimate good thing. More information, better. If you have more information, you will make better decisions, and so on, so on, so on. But think about any kind of work that you are doing. Is it really information that you are looking for most of the time if you need some sort of help? Sometimes it is. And sometimes information is crucial, and we cannot survive without that. For example, if you don't know at what time your group session is or in which room it is taking place, this information is something that you need. But if you have this information, you will never say, I have the information where the class and when the class is taking place. You will say, I know when the class is taking place. And this is where we start to make this confusion between information and knowledge. But much more frequently, if we are doing anything, if we are doing our jobs, if we are raising our kids and so on, it is much more frequently happening that we need something else and not information. What is this something else? Think just about choosing a kindergarten for a child. I know that some people now take these spreadsheets about how successful the various kindergartens are and which percentage of the pupils coming out from the kindergarten end up with university degrees and so on. But this is not most of people. How most of people do it? We go out to the playground with a child. We see other children playing around. Their parents are also around. We talk to some of the other parents. They will tell us about various kindergartens that they have experience with and so on. And then we decide whether we trust this person or not. And then we, if we like what we heard about a particular kindergarten or school, then we go there, we meet the teacher, and then we make up our mind. Now, there is no information really in this. It is all knowledge that was shared between these individuals that are involved in this process. So most of the time, we are looking for some insight. So for example, I have this situation. I don't understand it. Can you grasp what is the meaning? And this is, for example, an insight. We are looking for an opinion. What do you think? Should I buy an Android tablet or an iPad? There is no information in the response. I like Android much more, or I like iPad much more. That is just an opinion. Or we are looking for an idea. I'm stuck with this. Do you have an idea what I can do? I do or I don't. Or we are looking for experience. I am in this kind of situation now. I don't know what to do with it. Have you been in a similar situation before? Oh, yes, I have. And my experience was that never do this and this because it never works. And basically, this kind of knowledge, so all these various aspects of knowledge that I listed, these are all deeply context dependent. And it also means that it can be different based on the different perspective. So that's why you are trying to find a person, if you are looking for an opinion, who should have some sort of similar perspective to what you have. So another parent, if you are choosing a kindergarten for a child. But this perspective is quite crucial. Just think about two people reporting about climbing the same mountain. And one of them tells you that it is a very, very ugly place. It is very tiring, far too steep. There is no vegetation at all. It is just a very, very unpleasant experience. The other guy tells you it is a beautiful place, not too steep, very nice walk. Everything is green, lots of trees, bushes, everything. And it was a really, really pleasant experience. The first reaction, because we are stuck in the information era, is that we say one of them is lying. Not necessarily. It is also possible that one of them climbed the mountain from one side and the other one from the other side. Just look at the picture on this slide. If you look at that object from one side, you will see it as yes. If you look at it from the other side, you will see it as no. Now, the whole idea of the information economy was originally as a term introduced by Peter Drucker, who is perhaps the most significant management thinker of all times. So he did it quite early, but that's why he is the, the great management thinker. So he did it already in 1969. He formulated the idea of the knowledge economy based on looking into how people work and realizing that knowledge is becoming more and more important. But the first person to describe the knowledge worker was actually Karl Marx. And it is even much, much earlier, just he never introduced the terminology. Now, what is the essence of this knowledge economy, knowledge society? The essence is that we are, everything that surrounds us contains huge amount of knowledge. And I'm not only talking about services or these kind of lectures or whatever when it is very obvious. Think about objects, think about a car. That's not a new thing. We are making cars for a very, very long time. Still, if you buy a new car, about 70% of the value of that car, so of what you are paying for, is knowledge. If you think about more modern things like computers or your mobile phones, it will be much, much bigger proportion than the material that actually goes into it, all the cost of the actual manufacturing process. Now, this is the essence of the knowledge economy. And there is one aspect of this knowledge economy which is also crucial in order to understand a bit better how the whole society and economy works. And that is the network nature of this economy and society. So it is very important if you, for example, need some sort of knowledge and you don't have it, but you know who to ask. That is incredibly relevant. What we need is knowledge which is fresh and which is verified. Now, that is just not going to happen. Fresh means that it is some knowledge that is newly discovered. So if I am a company that my competitors are not using it yet, but I also need to be sure that it is the right kind of knowledge. Why it is not happening? The internet makes knowledge available very, very quickly. So we can have fresh knowledge easily. But if I wait until it is verified, my competitors will adopt it much sooner than I. And then I am losing my position. So that's why Charles Handy, who is probably the greatest management thinkers in the UK who is still alive, he said that by the time we can figure out with any certainty where we should be going, by that time it will be too late to go there. By that time there will be something else where you should be going. Now, this also rolls down to all our customers or citizens or your employees and so on. How this happens? It is happening through this sharing of knowledge. And you will have a more specific lecture about social media. But this is where it is all taking place. But for example, if you are going for a holiday, you can look at other people's opinion about that holiday location and so on. But what you need to understand is that the social media is not the same as the social network. There is a huge difference between the two. The social media is the platform where it can happen. The social network is your social connections. And there is a very easy way to understand it. It is, as Henry Mintzberg, a great management thinker, said, just try to ask your Facebook friends to paint your house. Thank you. This is the end of the first part. Go off now and do your exercise. Thank you.